What's going on, everybody? This is Nick from House of Paint, bringing you the Fire Giant. As you know, I love my giants. This will be, I think, my 5th giant on the channel. I've already done the Frost Giant, the Hill Giant, the Storm Giant, and the Fomorian, which I count as a giant. So yeah, the 5th, leaving only the Cloud Giant and the Stone Giants. This guy's covered in armor, so we're going to see a lot of non-metallic metal stuff coming at you, and of course reds and some kind of charcoal-y type of grays for his flesh. He is wielding a hammer. Looks to be a magical hammer that I'll try to do some magical effects on. He is wearing a crown as well. But before we get started, just a friendly reminder to smite like and slam subscribe so that you can stay up to date on all the latest content that I'm putting out there in my quest to paint the manual. Without further ado, here is the Fire Giant. Starting off on all the armor with a base coat of black and cold gray. Now with some pure cold gray, I'm going to be picking out a majority of the curves in the armor and some of the more prominent areas in the armor. Now with about a 50-50 mix of cold gray and white, I'm going to be concentrating those highlights
on the areas that are more susceptible to the light, such as the edges and the more rounded areas. Now I'm going to be using pure white primarily to edge, but also to pick out the absolute most prominent curves in the armor where I really want that light to be winking off of. Now with a 50-50 mix of night blue and black, I'm going to be defining the panels of the armor and applying this mixture into the grooves of the model. Now with the glaze of turquoise, I'll be applying this to the more prominent areas that are facing the light to add a little bit of a light reflection and kind of a coldness to the armor itself. Getting down to the skirts, I'm going to base these with a 50-50 mix of heavy red and heavy sienna. Now with a mix of heavy red and bloody red, I'll be applying a mid-tone to the skirts, focusing primarily on the folds and leaving that base color in the deepest recesses between the folds. Now with a mix of bloody red and orange fire, I'll be concentrating that highlight primarily to the upper curves of the folds to add some near to max highlights. Base coating his belt with a mix of heavy sienna and heavy brown. Heavy brown by itself to apply some highlights to the curves of the belt. And finally some heavy gold brown to give those belt loops a final highlight. Now to the flesh, we're going to be using a mix of Stonewall gray and black as a base coat. And with pure Stonewall gray, I'm going to be picking out some of the prominent areas of the face. I want the light facing him directly, and since he's kind of looking off to the left, he's going to have a more efficient highlight on the right side of his face than he will on the left. Now with the 50-50 mix of Stonewall gray and white, I'm going to be narrowing those highlights to cheekbones, lips, and the curve of his nose. Lay the foundation for his eyes with a little heavy gold brown. Now a more concentrated layer of sun yellow to add a little bit more brightness to the eye. Using black to apply the pupils. I'm gonna get his eyebrows a base with some heavy red. Applying a bit of a mid-tone to these eyebrows with some bloody red. And finally, a max highlight of orange fire. Starting up on his hair with a base coat of heavy red. Now the 50-50 mix of blood red and orange fire, I'll be applying the first highlights to the mix. And finally, with pure orange fire, I'll be applying some max highlights. So I'm going to be using the same technique that I used on the armor for the crown and the hammer. So I'm using a base of cold gray and black. Following that up with some pure cold gray over some of the more prominent curves of the crown. You'll also notice that I applied a very thin layer of sepia ink to the flesh to kind of give him like a sooty, like sweaty kind of vibe. Narrowing those highlights with a mix of cold gray and white. A little bit of a turquoise glaze reflecting the light from above. To create a little magical effect on the hammer, I'll be applying a base coat of night blue within the frame of the hammer. Now with some night blue and deep sky blue, I'm going to be narrowing that highlight a little bit. And what I really want to create is the effect that it's like glowing from within. Bring that night blue back around the edges a little bit. Now with pure white, I'm going to provide the smallest highlight in the center of that glow. Pop a dry brush on the base of Stonewall gray and a mix of other colors. Got some heavy brown in here, a little heavy red, just kind of a hodgepodge of what I had in the palette. And I'm gonna give it an initial dry brush before I start working on the base.
So my last order of business was I painted the base with a base coat of heavy red. Gave it a couple nice layers, and then over that I kind of wet blended some bloody red, orange fire, and sun yellow to kind of make it look like you know, like a pool of lava. And literally the way I did it was, you know, just like we did in preschool, like finger painting, only with a paintbrush. It was just like literally just kind of random swirls and sloshes. And then glued him down into the middle. And now what I'm going to be doing is using Citadel color Martian Ironearth. And what this is going to do is create a neat little effect. I'm going to put this all over it, and it's going to produce kind of this cracked looking layer over the fire. So give that some time to dry, and I'll show you the result when it does. So you can see the effect that it had on the base here after drying. I'm actually going to go ahead now and take some black to this base to kind of make the under layer show up a little bit more. Not exactly as much cracking as I would have liked, but it'll do. So I'm going to take some black and carefully apply it to the individual cracks, and then probably do a little dry brush around the outer rim here. All right, so there we have the fire giant. A lot of fun to paint this guy, and a lot of fun especially doing all of the effects. I like to go all out with models like this, the giants, the dragons, and things of that nature. So a lot of fun, and I definitely hope you enjoyed as well. Information on how to follow me on all my social media platforms is immediately following the video, as is information on how to follow Dominic Mary out of Crit UK and Mike Donnarummo of MVD Studios. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.